Right now, at Google, which is arguably one of the most advanced software engineering companies in human history, 3 out of every 4 lines of new code are not written by a human.
Yep. 75%.
75%. I mean, the machines are officially building the machines at this point.
Hmm.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a very specific snapshot in time for you.
A pretty wild snapshot, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. We've got Aaron Rose's Tech Reader AI Digest from today, Thursday, April 23, 2026. And our mission for you today is to explore how the AI industry has officially and honestly quite brutally shifted from theoretical disruption to operational reality.
Right. Today's digest, it really isn't about what AI might do someday. It's about the massive financial and human and even legal trades happening right this second.
Yeah, and across the hundreds of billions of dollars and like the thousands of jobs and the historic lawsuits in today's notes, there is a singular, undeniable pattern that emerges.
Oh, absolutely. The fundamental architecture of the modern enterprise is just being completely rebuilt. We are moving from a world where software assists humans to a world where software acts autonomously.
Completely on its own.
Exactly. And the structural shockwaves of that shift are hitting the workforce today, like right now.
Okay, let's unpack the sheer scale of those shockwaves because the numbers in the digest are just staggering. We have 2 massive parallel announcements from Meta and Microsoft. Let's look at Meta first.
Right, the internal memo.
Yeah, they just confirmed via an internal memo that they are laying off approximately 8,000 global employees. That is 10% of their workforce effective May 20.
And that's not even the whole picture, right?
No, it's not. They are also canceling 6,000 open roles. So the total human impact is 14,000 positions wiped off the organizational chart, and management, as always, is using very specific language here.
Of course.
Meta's chief people officer, Janelle Gale, framed this as an efficiency move to, and I'm quoting here, allow us to offset the other investments we're making.
Which is really just a polite corporate mechanism for describing a fundamental reallocation of resources. Aaron Rose uses a brilliant phrase for this in the digest, actually. He calls it the CAPEX human swap.
The CAPEX human swap.
Yeah, they're literally trading human expenditure for capital expenditure.
I want to pause on that word CAPEX, or capital expenditure, because it's important to understand what that actually means on the ground. We aren't talking about paying salaries or, monthly software subscriptions.
Right, it's not operational costs.
Exactly. We're talking about buying physical assets, pouring concrete, laying miles of fiber optic cables, buying server racks, and building liquid cooling systems that will sit in a warehouse for a decade.
And Meta is doubling its 2025 CapEx to somewhere between $115 and $135 billion for 2026.
Wait, up to $135 billion just for physical assets?
Yeah, up to $135 billion. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, they are explicitly doing this to bring Prometheus online.
Ah, right, the supercluster.
Exactly. That is their 1 gigawatt AI supercluster in New Albany, Ohio. And just to put 1 gigawatt into perspective for you, that is the continuous power draw of a medium-sized city dedicated entirely to training and running AI models.
That is just hard to even wrap your head around.
It is. But Mark Zuckerberg actually telegraphed this back in his January earnings call. He stated, 2026 is the year that AI starts to dramatically change the way that we work.
So the CAPEX human swap is that statement just becoming a financial reality?
Precisely. They are spending up to $135 billion on physical AI infrastructure and removing 14,000 potential salaries from the books to help balance the ledger.
And Microsoft is making a similar move, but they are doing it with a method that tells us even more about the changing demographics of the tech industry.
The buyout program.
Yeah, on the exact same day, Microsoft offers voluntary buyouts to about 8,750 U.S. employees, which is 7% of their domestic workforce. But they're using this Rule of 70 formula.
Right, which is fascinating.
It really is. So if your age plus your tenure at the company equals 70 or more, you get the buyer offer. The details are dropping May 7. So if you are 50 years old and you've worked at Microsoft for 20 years, you hit the magic number.
And this raises a massive historical red flag. I mean, Microsoft has been a publicly traded company for 51 years.
Yeah.
They survived the PC revolution, the dot-com bust, the shift to mobile, the shift to cloud. In over half a century, they have never offered a voluntary buyout program of this scale.
Never. Wow.
Never. It implies a really strong desire to gracefully exit older, perhaps more traditional middle management roles. It clears the path, and obviously the payroll, for a fundamentally different kind of operation.
So if you're listening to this and you're a middle manager or a data analyst or like a project coordinator, you might be thinking, well, an AI can't run my team meetings or handle my complex client relationships.
And they're probably right about that specific part.
They are right. But the jobs being cut aren't necessarily the people running the meetings. The AI can write the reports, synthesize the data, and generate the code that used to take up 40% of your week.
Exactly.
Which means your company suddenly only needs 3 managers to handle the output instead of 5. I mean, the Digest notes over 96,000 tech workers have been laid off in 2026 alone across companies like Oracle, Amazon, Disney, and Salesforce.
The roles disappearing are the exact functions where AI is actively demonstrating operational competence. It's a direct, measurable substitution. The money saved on those salaries is just being funneled directly into the data centers required to run the automated replacements.
So if Meta and Microsoft and all these other players are taking payroll money and spending hundreds of billions of dollars on compute infrastructure, literally building cities of servers, where exactly is that money going? What is the actual product they are trying to power?
Well, Google just gave us the blueprint.
They really did. Google Cloud Next 26 just wrapped up at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and Sundar Pichai and Thomas Kurian made it abundantly clear that the era of the basic AI chatbot is over. They are now selling the agentic enterprise.
And the centerpiece of that announcement was the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. It is effectively an entirely new operating system for a corporation.
Yeah, they introduced an agent designer, which basically allows anyone to build autonomous workers. But the fascinating part to me is the inbox for agent activity.
The inbox is wild.
It is wild. You aren't just opening your email inbox to see messages from human coworkers anymore. You have an inbox specifically to manage your AI agents.
Right.
You log in and you see that your research agent spent the night scraping competitor websites. Your data agent synthesized that into a quarterly projection, and your drafting agent wrote a memo based on those projections.
Because they are long-running agents. They don't just answer a prompt to go to sleep. They work continuously in the background using what Google calls skills.
Yeah, and they even launched Agentic Defense, which marries Google Threat Intelligence with Wiz's cloud and AI security platform. You literally have AI agents actively fighting off cyber attacks from other AI agents in real time.
But to power an ecosystem where millions of virtual agents are constantly thinking and acting, you need a radical shift in hardware. And this is where Google made a highly controversial yet really calculated move.
Yes, the TPU V8. Google launched their new silicon, but they split it into 2 completely different configurations. There's the TPU 8T, which is optimized strictly for training the AI, and the TPU 8i, which is built strictly for inference.
Right, inference meaning actually running the AI once it's built.
Wait, so if I'm understanding the market dynamics right, NVIDIA's entire dominance is built on their unified GPU approach? Like, the whole selling point is that it can do everything. Why is Google actively splitting the silicon? That seems like a step backward into specialized and flexible hardware.
It's a great question, but think of training an AI model like sending a medical student to Johns Hopkins for 8 years. They're reading every textbook, processing millions of case studies, making billions of complex neural connections. It requires a massive, clustered, incredibly intense burst of energy.
Makes sense.
But inference running the model is what happens after they graduate. When you go to that doctor with a basic cough, they don't have to reread the entire medical library to diagnose you. They just use the knowledge they already have to make a quick calculation.
Oh, I see. So Google realized it's a massive waste of money to use a medical school chip to do a basic clinic visit calculation.
Precisely. This is a direct architectural challenge to NVIDIA. Google is looking at the agentic era and realizing their customers don't need an incredibly expensive unified chip running 24/7 just to power an AI agent that is sorting emails or generating code.
Right.
Google's argument is that split silicon delivers vastly better per-token economics for agent-first workloads.
And when we say tokens, for those listening, we aren't talking about, like, arcade coins. Think of a token in AI as a chunk of a word. A standard paragraph of text might be 100 tokens. Every time an AI reads or generates a token, it costs a fraction of a cent in compute power.
And when you look at the scale Google is operating at, those fractions of a cent dictate the entire business model. The digest highlights that 75% of Google Cloud customers now use AI.
75%.
Yeah. They have 330 enterprise customers who processed over 1 trillion tokens each in the last year alone. Google is handling 16 billion tokens per minute via their direct API.
That is absurd volume.
When you are processing 16 billion calculations a minute, saving a fraction of a penny on inference isn't just an optimization. It's the difference between immense profitability and going bankrupt.
Which brings us back to the most jaw-dropping statistic in the entire digest. Here's where it gets really interesting. The scale of this inference hardware is what enables Sundar Pichai to disclose that approximately 75% of all new Google code is now AI-generated.
Right, which we touched on at the very beginning.
Exactly. 3 out of every 4 lines of software at Google are written by machines.
Aaron Rose points out the gravity of this disclosure in the notes. That 75% metric is not a product pitch to convince you to buy Gemini.
No.
That is a mandatory financial disclosure about Google's internal operational reality to their shareholders. If the organization that is literally inventing the AI tools is already using them to write the vast majority of its own software, the trajectory for the enterprise tools used by every Fortune 500 company is already locked in.
Yeah, the AI is successfully writing the software that will run the AI.
Exactly. But, as these agentic systems are writing their own code, executing complex enterprise workflows, and essentially becoming the digital brain of modern corporations, it immediately creates a massive legal collision.
Who actually owns that underlying brain?
Right. The fight over intellectual property and the control of the core intelligence is really reaching a boiling point. Which brings us to the courtroom.
The timing is incredible. Just as the infrastructure scales up to this monumental level, the foundational relationships that started the entire boom are totally fracturing. We are just 4 days out from the Musk versus OpenAI trial.
Which is going to be quite the spectacle.
It starts this coming Monday, April 27, at 8 a.m. Pacific in Oakland, and Judge Gonzalez-Rogers has officially bifurcated the trial based on a joint filing from April 16th. I want to make sure we get the mechanics of this right.
Yeah, the bifurcation is key.
They are splitting the trial into 2 totally separate phases. Phase 1 is purely about liability. It asks the core questions. Did OpenAI commit fraud? Did Sam Altman and Greg Brockman breach their fiduciary duties to Elon Musk back when he was a donor to the nonprofit?
And then, and only if liability is found by the jury, do they move to phase 2.
Right. Phase 2 is about the remedies, the financial damages, the $134 billion, and returning to nonprofit status. But I have a question about this. Why split it up at all? The digest mentions Musk's side is claiming $134 billion in damages. The judge herself said that number seemed pulled from the air.
She did say that, yeah.
So why wouldn't OpenAI's lawyers want to parade that absurd astronomical number in front of the jury right away to make Musk look ridiculous and unreasonable, make it a massive spectacle right out of the gate?
What's fascinating here is that this is a highly strategic legal maneuver designed to control the narrative. It's a double-edged sword. OpenAI is terrified of a psychological phenomenon called jury shock.
Jury shock?
Yeah. OpenAI is currently sitting on a private market valuation of $840 billion. If you walk into a courtroom in Oakland and immediately start throwing around numbers like an $840 billion valuation and $134 billion damages claim, the jury's brain simply stops processing the complex, dry legal arguments about corporate governance and fiduciary duty.
They just see the money.
Exactly. They just see unfathomable, world-altering wealth. A jury might subconsciously think, well, OpenAI has nearly $1 trillion. What's the harm in making them pay Musk a fraction of that?
That makes total sense.
Right. By bifurcating the trial, OpenAI completely walls off the financial spectacle from phase 1. Plus, the jury is now only advisory on damages anyway.
So OpenAI essentially gets to hide their massive wealth from the jury while they argue the technicalities of their nonprofit origins. But doesn't this also give Musk a massive advantage in phase 1?
It definitely does. It gives his legal team laser focus. The only question Monday's jury has to answer is an emotional one. Did these founders lie to a donor?
Wow. Yeah. That is a deeply human narrative to pitch.
And the digest specifically highlights the Brockman diary as a key piece of evidence. This diary will be the focal point of phase 1. If Musk's team can show diary entries suggesting the leadership knew they were eventually going to pivot to a massive for-profit model while actively taking Musk's donations under the guise of a nonprofit, phase 1 could be highly uncomfortable for the defense.
It really strips away the complex tech and boils it down to basic betrayal. But the irony here is that while the giants are in an Oakland courtroom fighting over who controls the intellectual property, the physical infrastructure supporting that property is buckling under the weight of current demand.
Oh, absolutely. The rest of the ecosystem is definitely feeling the strain.
Yeah, as we move out of the courtroom and look at the broader ecosystem, we are seeing the actual physical limits of this technology play out in real time this week. Case in point, as Elon Musk's legal team is finalizing their trial prep, his own AI company is suffering a massive bottleneck.
The Grok situation.
Yeah, xAI's chatbot, Grok, has been locked out in a high-demand error for over 48 hours, and this is affecting both free users and paid SuperGrok users.
And strangely, xAI's official dashboard claims everything is fully operational.
Which totally contradicts the 813-plus independent outage reports on ISDown.
Well, when a system like Grok goes down for 2 days, it usually isn't just a simple software bug. It highlights the immense difficulty of balancing continuous inference workloads at a global scale. Right.
But the hardware constraints are even more pronounced when you look at international developments. The highly anticipated DeepSeek model from China is still unreleased.
Right. The digest says it's officially delayed to late April or early May due to optimizations around the Canon stack and the Huawei Ascend 950 PR chips. So this isn't about code quality. This is about adapting the code to fit entirely different physical hardware.
Exactly. Due to export controls, Chinese AI companies cannot easily access NVIDIA's latest chips. They have to build their models on domestic hardware like Huawei's Ascend chips.
Right.
And the Canon stack compute architecture for neural networks is Huawei's software layer that translates the AI code so the chip can process it. Translating massive, frontier-level AI models to run efficiently on alternative hardware stacks creates massive friction and months of delays.
Meanwhile, the companies that DO have access to the hardware are just buying it at a pace that is hard to comprehend. We saw Meta building a 1 gigawatt facility. And the digest notes that just on Tuesday, Anthropic signed a $25 billion deal with Amazon. And that deal includes 5 gigawatts of power.
5 gigawatts. That's 5 of Meta's Prometheus clusters. And on the consumer software side, if you're a developer, you only have 7 days left on the GitHub Copilot Opus 4.7 Premium Multiplier. The tools are getting more expensive to use, vastly more powerful, and requiring literally multiple city-sized power grids to function.
The sheer volume of energy and capital being deployed is just unprecedented.
So what does this all mean for you? If you step back and look at everything we've unpacked today from Aaron Rose's Digest, you are witnessing a synchronized, industry-wide pivot. This is the inflection point.
Definitely.
The 14,000 roles impacted at Meta, the historic, unprecedented buyouts clearing out middle management at Microsoft, the gigawatt superclusters being built in Ohio, the revelation that 75% of new Google code is generated by AI, and the billion-dollar courtroom battles over who owns the core intelligence.
All of it.
These aren't isolated tech stories. They are symptoms of the exact same reality. The agentic era has officially arrived. It is fundamentally reshaping the physical infrastructure of the internet, the corporate structure of the Fortune 500, and the software tools you use every single day.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Think about that Google statistic again. Google is generating 75% of its code with AI today. Meanwhile, Meta is actively building a 1 gigawatt supercluster.
Right.
If the machines are increasingly building the machines, and the software is writing the software, what is the actual definition of a tech worker going to be exactly 1 year from today?
That's a great question.
Are we moving toward a future where a trillion-dollar enterprise is essentially just a handful of executives, a massive data center, and a swarm of AI agents executing their vision?
It's a heavy question to end on, but clearly, looking at the layoffs and the investments we talked about today, the market is already betting heavily on the answer. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the operational reality of AI. It's moving incredibly fast, but we'll be right here to help you unpack the mechanisms behind the headlines. We will catch you next time.